What's up, everybody? Welcome into a hump day edition of The Slate. Adam Kaufman, Nick Fryer, Jeff Ulrich, we're all here with you. And this is going to be fun because we got a lot to cover. Typically, Thursday is the show that we bounce around, but I think it's appropriate here midweek to do a little bit of everything. It's Super Bowl week. More on that in a second. Waste Management Open taking place also in Arizona and starting up tomorrow. And of course, you got a mid-sized slate in the NBA tonight that we can touch on as well a little bit later on. We'll save that for last. Fellas, good to see you. Fryer, I saw you earlier today doing our little ESPN hit that people can check out. Tune in to NBA Countdown in a couple hours. But Ulrich, I want to start with you, buddy, because I'm a little disappointed. I know you're there with your family. I don't know if you're at your in-laws or wherever you are exactly. Maybe you're at a vacation home. You can keep that to yourself if you want. But you've been on the Super Bowl set at Radio Row this week with our counterparts, our coworkers, and yet for some reason you're like in a closet right now. Why are you not at Radio Row?
Because it's about an hour from my house in Phoenix traffic, and if I went there every day, I'd probably die of exhaustion. So, and yeah, my kid, I'm in Phoenix with my kids too, so I got to spend some time with them.
It would look so good though. Tell us about the setup. I know we've seen it, but you've lived it. How'd you enjoy?
Setup is amazing, man. There? I mean, seriously, like I was telling you guys before. I mean, huge stage. Looking out onto everyone with on Radio Row there, so grabbing people, talking to people as they go by, which was Jesse and Emerson's job, and then obviously bringing content from VSiN and our own obviously shows and the Sweat and stuff like that. Really cool, and check it out. Obviously, once Twitter fixes itself, and you'll be able to find them on DK Live and stuff like that. But yeah, very cool. Like I said, I mean the quality that DK Live and stuff putting out is keeps improving. Really cool to see. So
I gotta say, Nick, I think the more interesting thing, the more impressive thing, and I know like you and we still haven't actually lived it, but the fact that Ulrich here he's a real person. He's not just this hologram that we've been talking about for years and years working for DraftKings, who we only see from like the torso or chest up. He's got legs. He was walking around. He met people he's been working with for years.
It had to be surreal. Just to get off topic for a bit. I mean, I met Jason Pichetti, Kaufman, who I've worked with. Like he was the first guy, like one of the first guys I ever worked with at this company. I didn't even know he was going to be there. So, I mean, seeing him and then obviously meeting Emerson and Jesse as well, in the flesh. And then after like 5 minutes after I was working with him, I was on set with him, like doing a take. So it was surreal, man. Yeah, it was awesome. Going back Friday. I will be back there Friday. So.
All right. So make sure if you haven't been watching The Sweat live from Radio Row all throughout the week, make sure you do check it out. Comes your way normal time, normal 11 o'clock Eastern. So obviously they're starting earlier out west, but worth getting up for. Special guests all throughout the week on Radio Row, mostly other podcasts that are affiliated with us, the Golics and Golic and Smetty, and then Gojo Show, and among others, obviously, and members of VSiN, special guests from other networks and stations. So do check that out. You can watch it on demand on the YouTube page as well for DraftKings. But let's get into the Super Bowl, guys, because that's what, like I said, we've been talking about for about a week and a half. And Nick, Jeff's been doing most of the talking. I've been doing most of the talking, really. So let's start with you. Has anything changed for you as you get closer to the game in terms of how you want to approach this on the DraftKings Sportsbook?
I just want to say real quick that I'm not fully convinced that Jeff isn't part of a simulation, that this isn't like the Sims that we're seeing out there. So I'm not fully buying it. I saw how he danced and everything, not buying that he's not necessarily a robot. But no, when it comes to my feel for it, I mean, I think Jeff and I are actually pretty aligned when it comes to this one. It still feels to me like it's the Eagles to lose. Right now, they're -1.5. And I know that's the public play. Okay, I don't love that. I'm actually kind of leaning more towards going with the money line, -125 right now. I know we've seen a little bit of fluctuation on that one. But where that is the public play, the Eagles covering, and it's still getting a little bit of sharp money there. But more importantly, the money line is the one where it seems like there's more sharp action there. It's 50-50 split right now when you look at the percentage of bets. But then it's only it's getting 50% of the handle, but only 45% of the bets. So 55% of the bets right there, public play. But then that's where we get that split right now on the handle, but still that 5% right there is sharp money. So I'm leaning towards that right now. I don't need that cushion, -125. I'm fine with that still. And it's just, we've talked about it a lot already, like throughout the course of the week. I know Jeff hit on it the other day and everybody else has been joining the Sweat. It's just that I look at that and it's a more complete team. I feel like they can handle a few more punches. We're finding out, Patrick Mahomes is not completely 100%. But in reality, no one is ever really 100% at this time of year, especially when it comes to football. You could be talking about basketball, though, or baseball. It really wouldn't matter. But right now, I just feel like if he's really not 100%, if you're talking about that right now where he's not really 100%, I mean, you can't do anything. The Chiefs can't do anything if they don't have Patrick Mahomes at a certain level. So to me, the Eagles can handle a few more punches, can roll with it. So I feel very comfortable. Money line, I don't want to get cute with the spread on this one.
I don't know if I'm being a little naive here or overrating a guy who might very well, by the time he retires, be considered the greatest tight end of all time. He's already obviously in the conversation in Travis Kelce, Jeff. But I feel like I look at the Chiefs and I just say to myself, this guy, in terms of reliability and floor and, QB proof, if something were to happen to Mahomes and Chad Henne comes in, if I'm looking at either side of this game, whether it's all the, Smith and Brown, the Sanders, the various weapons, Goddard, obviously, that are on the Eagles versus, not so much, honestly, on the Chiefs outside of clearly Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, which are two, big superstars, clearly, but not a whole lot around the two of those guys that you can surefire count on. To me, like that, he just becomes, whether it's a prop going over the yards and around 80 plus, or whether you're looking at DFS and a captain play, whatever it may be, he just feels like the safest guy to me that screams like the Chiefs are going to be in this game no matter what. Even if you don't think they're going to win, they're going to be in this game no matter what, because Travis Kelce is always a weapon.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. That's kind of how I wrote him up in the Showdown article this week as well. Like Kelce, to me, even if you're not considering him for a captain, like you'd rather go to Hurts or maybe go for a lower owned play like McKinnon or Sanders, Kelce's floor is just too hard to ignore. So to me, that's actually kind of almost the exact argument I made. His impact in this game is going to be felt one way or the other. Either the Chiefs win because Kelce and Mahomes are just so unstoppable that they overcome this elite defense and that their defense just holds, the Eagles to just few enough points that they win, or like the Eagles get theirs and but at the same time, like Kelce probably gets 7 or 8 catches anyways because Mahomes is throwing more. So for showdown purposes, I really think like in the flex, it's really hard to get away from Kelce. You could go super boom or bust and like pay up for, maybe Brown and Devonta Smith. But I mean, man, like those guys have some seriously low floors. We've seen AJ Brown, like just not put up good games. And it's not that he's not a good player. It's just that he's on a rush first offense. He's got Devonta Smith, basically 2 wide receiver ones out there. And, there's just going to be weeks where the big plays don't materialize. He gets 6 targets and just doesn't do much. So yeah, it's hard to ignore Kelce, especially for showdown, in my opinion. The over under prop, I mean, it does feel a little low. I do have a lot of respect.
Right. 77.5.
Yeah. I do have a lot of respect for the Philly pass defense. So, but, it just as a vibe, it feels low, there's nothing else to say about it. Mm-hmm. It's not like my favorite prop or anything. It does feel like a public bet going over on Kelce, but, I if he goes over, I'm not going to be like sitting on the couch shocked for sure.
Sort of to that point though, Nick, I always think about over-unders a little bit in terms of game flow and whatnot. And I don't think this is a weird take by any means, because like I highlighted before, there's just uncertainty in terms of the wide receivers on that Chiefs team. Like I think Kelce's going to hit the over, but I think Mahomes is going to come under. I don't see him hitting 294 and a half in this game. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Kelce, I'm kind of with Jeff on this one, where like I'm kind of staying away from the prop. I do think from a DFS standpoint, he makes great points, and that's why, again, Jeff said this earlier in the week, and it was a great point. You got to find one of those guys in that 200 range when you're talking DFS. And I know you, Jeff, you and Pierce always try and find that tight end, but in this case, you did highlight a wide receiver earlier in the week, because that's going to give you a ton of flexibility where you can have a Kelce and Mahomes and not really break too much of a sweat, and then maybe throw in like a Gainwell, who I really like his rushing prop still after we talked about it last week. But yeah, when it comes to go back to Kelce, I think it was last week, I ended up taking the over on his receiving prop, and it was right around this same mark. It was like fluctuating between 76.5, 77.5. I don't know if it got up to 78, but I think when I wrote it up, it was 70. Like he just barely got over that, and that was going up against the Bengals defense, which, yes, solid defense and everything like that. And I know there are questions when it comes to the Eagles just because of the quality of quarterbacks that they faced throughout the course of the season. But right now, I'm kind of staying away from Kelce when it comes to his prop. He could still do well from a DFS standpoint if he gets a touchdown, maybe two. When it comes to Mahomes, just in general, Kaufman, I think you're onto something where it's just taking the unders on quarterbacks passing yards right now. I just don't trust it in general. I think last week, or I'm sorry, in the championship round, it was 3 for 4 if you took the under. The only one that did go over was actually Patrick Mahomes. So I'm actually staying away from that. If you want to bet on Mahomes or against Mahomes, the way I went, and I wrote this up on DK Nation, is taking him to throw an interception in this game. It was minus 115 last I looked at it. I mean, look, he's on a streak right now where he hasn't thrown an interception. I believe it's 3 games. But, I mean, he's thrown an interception in 60.2% of his 93 career NFL games. That's including playoff games. So this dry spell isn't going to last, especially against a team that has an interception in 12 of their 19 games. So you're still getting it at a pretty good price too. And honestly, it just takes one mistake. It could even take a drop from a guy that goes errant. There's a lot of things that can go wrong here. So I that to me is one of my favorite bets in this game.
So our good buddy, dearly departed Reed Fowler, don't worry, he's still alive. We don't work with him anymore, so I guess he's dead to us, Jeff. But he and I, when we would do these shows, we used to talk about telling each other a story, right? A narrative of a game. How do you think it's going to play out? And whether that applies to betting, whether it applies to DFS, a little bit of both. Are you being influenced, and this is for both of you, but we'll start with you, Jeff. Are you being influenced at all in terms of how you're thinking about this game? Like your betting, are your picks, your lineups, if you've started to build them, are they being influenced by how you believe this game is going to play out? Are you talking to yourself into a certain outcome for this game, or are you just kind of looking at statistically what makes the most sense to you?
I mean, I think it's always, you need to do a little bit of both of that. I mean, you shouldn't just, I think that just betting in one way can get you in trouble. So for me, let's put it this way. From a statistical standpoint, one thing that I want to take advantage of this week is that, like, Patrick Mahomes, what did we say his pass prop was at?
294.5.
Yeah. It's at 294.5. The only person with receiving total bigger than 50 yards for the Chiefs right now is Travis Kelce. There's somebody else on the Chiefs that's going to have a decent day. Like, they just have to. I mean, even if Mahomes throws for like 280, like Travis Kelce isn't getting 180 yards, is he? I mean, like you've got to see, like, Jerick McKinnon, 20,
Juju is second,
yards.
By the way, at 36.5.
Yeah. So I think there's opportunity there. And it's not just you can just bet them in the normal props, but, like, let's look to the alt lines. I mean, Jerick McKinnon is a player I think is a great receiving target, just in terms of alternative lines, 50 plus 330, 75 plus, maybe even 850. But Juju as well is kind of in there. So I would look to some of those. I think that from just a statistical perspective, one of these guys has to go. And, like, I like fading Marquez Valdes-Scantling there. Kind of like looking to, like, McKinnon and Juju, I think is kind of more targets that could pop up. And then from like you said, like a game flow scenario, again, like if you just bet the Eagles, I mean, I think there's a lot of scenarios where, if you like the Eagles, just bet them. You don't necessarily have to get crazy, but if you want to look for other ways to potentially profit off of, or maybe just, I don't know, just expand your exposure to an Eagles win. I mean, going over on, like, Kenneth Gainwell, who's had a lot of work in blowouts, who's got really low lines, who's just a really explosive runner down the stretch.
You don't think this is going to be a blowout, though, do you?
I mean, I don't think it's going to be a blow, but I won't be shocked if the Eagles win by 10 points. No, I don't think that, like, this is going to be a blowout. I mean, I think that that's potentially a scenario, but it's pretty low likelihood. I do think the Eagles are the better team, and I think that their rush offense eventually will come through. And I think that looking at, like, Gainwell for an Eagles win for overs makes sense, potentially even like alt lines. And then Miles Sanders to get in the end zone as well is something that, if you like the Eagles to win, I think is very likely to happen. So yeah, you should definitely be looking at props of how you think the most likely scenario is going to come about. But certainly, like, just don't like you can look at, we talk about these Chiefs lines. I mean, if you don't like the Chiefs, I mean, doesn't mean you can't bet overs on some of their players either. So, it's a little bit of both to answer that question.
So sort of to Jeff's point, Nick, I don't know, maybe I'm going too much one way, and that way being the storytelling, the narratives that I've convinced myself of, or that my heart is willing, my brain, what have you, because I don't like the Chiefs. I don't really like the Eagles either, but I really don't like the Chiefs. So not only do I believe the Eagles are going to win this game, I'm rooting for the Eagles to win this game, and I'm sort of telling myself, like how I want to bet along those same lines. Like I already told you how I feel about Kelsey and Mahomes and the various weapons that, are or aren't around them. When I'm looking at the Eagles side of things, I know Jeff, when he was on the Sweat earlier this week out there in Arizona, he was talking about Miles Sanders as a potential captain pick. I don't know if I'm going to do that in my lineups, but I love the idea of it. And I absolutely like looking at Sanders 60.5, his rush prop. I'd absolutely go over on that. I think Sanders is going to have a great spot in this game for Philly. And again, blowout or not, I just think there's going to be a garbage time element. I don't think this game is going to come down to like a winning field goal with 2 minutes left. So maybe I'll be wrong. I think it'll, there'll be some shootout element to where, we hit the over and you get 50 plus points in this game. But, that's how I fall with it. But what are you looking at?
Well, I think that, you're highlighting an important difference of betting with storylines and also betting with your heart. And whenever you're betting with your heart, I always feel like now you're playing with fire, whether that's, if you have hatred. Yeah, if you have, whether it's your heart and I guess you have hatred for a player or a team, or the other way around. Usually if you're going with that, like personally, like, if there's a team that I don't like, let's say like we're talking about baseball and it's the Yankees, if I want to go and bet on them, then I feel like, okay, I'm completely going against my heart. So that makes me feel even better about that. But in a situation where it's like, oh, you don't like the Chiefs and you want to bet against them, then it's like, okay, maybe take a step back, look at this, like you said, look at the storylines. But to me, as much, I always want to try and start with the stats, and I usually try and see what's speaking to me as I'm looking through the odds and everything like that, what I have even before I'm looking at the odds, if anything's jumping out, and then kind of assess the situation from there. And when it comes to the Gainwell situation, I mean, at first, Sanders, the guy I'm going to look at right away, but then when it comes to Gainwell, so my favorite prop is definitely the Mahomes interception one. Obviously not this crazy one that's getting like this crazy payout or anything like that. But Gainwell, the over on his rushing yards is my second favorite one for this game. The over is only 7-5. So obviously DraftKings Sportsbook has a really good read on Gainwell so far this season. He's gone under this number 11 times in his 19 games overall, but the over has hit in the last three. I'm sorry, he's gone over this number in the last 3 games. And for me, then we start looking at like the story of this game and how things are going to play out and whatnot. And you guys are talking about, if there's a blowout situation in this, Gainwell is going to get those touches. And honestly, it doesn't take too much for him to get to this number. So in the times that he's gotten at least 4 rushes in a game this season, he has gone over this number 7 times, and that's in 9 games where he's gotten at least 4 touches this season, including the postseason. So to me, like when I see that, it doesn't take much. And then you look at what opposing running backs have done against the Chiefs, they average 4.35 yards per carry. Obviously, if he gets that amount and then he gets 4 touches, that's not going to get the job done for us. But it only takes a little bit of variance from that in order for him to get this number. So it's a low enough number for me, especially if he rips off one big play, that I'm definitely going to be messing around with that one.
We've got about 15 more minutes. If anyone has any thoughts, questions, whatever it may be, hit us up. Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. We appreciate you hanging out here with us, obviously. Emerson normally with you on Wednesdays. He's busy out in Arizona doing something on Radio Row. I don't know. We'll find out, sure enough.
He's getting free big hats is what he's doing. That's what he was doing yesterday.
Just walking around getting big hats. I did see some of those surfing around on social media. Joe Kelly, former Red Sox and Dodger and other team pitcher, wearing a giant DraftKings hat. So good on him. He's the Burt Reynolds style. It's a big hat. It's funny. Norm Macdonald. Let's talk a little bit though about what else is going on in Arizona. And if I know Jeff as I do, not that I don't think he had the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl on Sunday. He's going to be going to the Waste Management Open, but given the choice, I bet that's what you would do anyway, Jeff. I bet you would head over to the links and check out Waste Management. How excited are you for this event?
Yeah, no, I mean that's why I initially booked this trip, so we could go to Waste Management. So no, I'm excited, man. It's going to be an experience. It's a great golf course. really exciting down the stretch. I mean, some really just big swings. They got a par, it ends par 5, stadium par 3, 290-yard par 4, and then a bit of a tougher par 4 as well on the 18th with a tee shot over water. So lots of swings at the Waste Management, and it's just a good course, fun event. So really looking forward to that. Really good field this year too, obviously. So it's going to be a good one. Kind of feels like the start of the golf season too. Like we have some of these funky events, and this is the first big field, full field event.
Well, it feels like the start for me for sure, because this will be the first tournament of the year that I'm actually making lineups for and have an interest, and not even with the draft.
Finding out when they start on what day,
now that I know it begins on a Thursday, who would have thunk it? I'm looking at top projected ownership, as we sit here. I guess 14 hours out or something like that. John Rahm. Go figure. I mean, he's going to be insanely popular, of course. You got Cameron Young, Rory McIlroy, Colin Morikawa, Patrick Cantlay, guys that you would expect to be obviously near the top in terms of, really popular players. But then, some of the guys that are more mid-range, like a Keith Mitchell and Brian Harmon, Keegan Bradley are going to be out there as well. If we were to go we could look at price ranges, I guess, if that's the easiest way to go about it, Jeff. But do you have favorite plays, upper echelon, higher price guys that you're looking at this weekend?
Yeah. So, I mean, ownership obviously is always a big thing to be considering in the field. And I get why some of these guys are projecting highly. Obviously the field's going to kind of congregate on certain names, but to me, whenever you're getting a higher owned play in the 7K range, they're usually a really good fade. These guys are in the 7K range for a reason in golf. They're inconsistent. They have flaws. Brian Harmon, to me, is just like a really good fade for that reason alone. It's not that he's a bad golfer, that he can't get hot with the putter and land you top 5, but he's 7,400. The field's going to be on him. There's a ton of players down there with similar skill sets, including my guy Russell Henley, who I think is a really good pivot there at 7,400. He played really well over in the Sony's, gaining strokes. I mean, if his putter shows up, he's just got a better floor than Harmon too. So I think Henley down there at 7,400 is actually a good pivot off of both Mitchell and Harmon. If I was going to play one of Mitchell or Harmon, it'd be Mitchell. He's very consistent off the tee. He makes a lot of cuts. He was in contention last week. He kind of faltered. That's the only thing that really scares me about him, is that he could be a little bit of fatigue, but the other factor is obviously ownership. So I'd be looking at Hanley, or potentially even to go a little bit cheaper down there. Chris Kirk. Kirk's probably going to have some ownership. Wyndham Clark is down there as well. So, the top end guys, if you like Cameron Young, I mean, he's fine. He's not like my favorite play of the week, but he's also only 8,900. So, it does make a lot of sense that, him out of the 9K range is pretty good value. It's hard to ignore that.
Nick, I know in a little while you'll have your Fade Fryer pick, but while we're talking about guys that we like, that we should target, whether it's DFS or obviously sports betting, who jumps out at you?
I mean, I'm just going to jump to my Fade Fryer pick because that's the only guy that I really care about for this whole week. Now, you can get him at plus money in the top 40, but Jeff always likes to point out to me, because, he likes to be a know-it-all when it comes to golf, that we got to go for the all-out, for who's coming in first place. That's all that matters. Fine. Okay.
Maverick,
wait a second, Jeff. Maverick McNeely. Okay. He's at plus 13,000 right now, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff. He's way down there.
Scrolling it. Yep, there he is.
Okay. Now, look, I get it. He's coming off of that shoulder issue that forced him to withdraw at Pebble Beach. Personally, I don't care. I know he's 7,500 in DFS too. Okay, way to differentiate yourself. But he's been putting really well. Was he top 2 in strokes gained putting right now this season? And look, I know, Jeff, in your cheat sheet, you talked about the importance of what guys do at the tee box at TPC Scottsdale. I know he's not among the top 20 off the tee right now, but when you look at what he's averaging on his drives, he's at 302.8. That's 20 yards off of the leader right now. I forget who it was, but it was like 322.2. So he's right there in terms of driving. So he's got that. And obviously, we need someone who's good on the greens and everything. So Maverick McNeely is my guy right now to win. But I think, if you got him at plus 110 to get top 42, there's a lot of ways so you can get creative with him on DK Sportsbook.
Moose, your rebuttal?
So it's an interesting pick. I mean, McNeely was probably the most overpriced golfer in the field last week. He was 20-1. And I don't know, I don't have any inside information, but I mean, there were golfers withdrawing left and right last week after the third round. So honestly, the most likely scenario is there's nothing wrong with them. So the price is right. Like, you shouldn't be Maverick McNeely. I've actually referred to Maverick McNeely as potentially the most overrated golfer just in terms of betting. Everyone wants to hit this guy, and his number always falls down in this like 30-1, 20-1 range where he should be like 50-1. It's not that he's a bad player, but he's not consistent enough with the ball striking that he should be rated down there in a lot of fields. But you're getting about plus 13,000 this week, which I think is actually again, like you can't make him any bigger in odds than that. You never get like even in this field. So it's really not a bad long shot bet. I would probably rather bet him top 40, top 20, if I'm being dead honest. You could certainly sprinkle on him on the long shot. My problem with him this week too, he's never played this event, which is kind of weird. And you usually see the winners play here. So that's one mark against him. But again, we're not investing a ton at plus 13,000. So I think it's fine. Again, this is a complete value proposition. He's 20-1 last week. That's like 6 times, we're talking 6 times the odds you're getting. That's a big jump. And it's like the yo-yo with him has gone too far. So it's fine. Yeah. I mean, I considered him the start of the week. You want to sprinkle a little bit? I think it's fine. I think sprinkling him for like a top 20 bet is fine too. He's playing well. He played well at the Sony to start. He's had that one hiccup at Pebble Beach, but I mean, again, weird event.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just an event you don't look at in terms of results because it's like it's just not normal. So,
and in terms of star power too, I know like that's a big thing for this week's tournament, but it's just there wasn't like in terms of trying to find like a value play, there wasn't that guy that fit that mold because that was the last thing I was trying to look at too. Was okay, I know approach is important for this tournament, fine, but I'm looking at when we're highlighting that driving is so important here. I'm obviously starting my thing with putting and then moving to there next. I couldn't find a guy who fit that profile in that value range of like having played this tournament and done well at it previously. And then with him, it's just like you said, he hasn't even played. But so yeah, I think top 40 is probably the best way to go. But again,
you want to know something else? If you another area to potentially back Maverick McNeely is first round leader. Again, like you're just asking him to just have one good round. I mean, it's a player who obviously maybe isn't as elite as some of the top names, but like for a first round leader play, that's not bad. I actually like that. So actually, I think the only reason I didn't include him, he may have an AAMT time, but it's not that big a deal. It's just a little cooler out here. And in Scottsdale, actually, it's not even going to be that bad. So yeah, McNeely, first round leader, top 20, top 10 even. Like I can get behind that. Nice. Look, Scotty Scheffler lost strokes on approach here last season. So
they did. Okay.
And he won. McNeely can certainly light it up with the putter enough to get in that top 10, top 5.
Let's mix in a little bit of DFS, and obviously the most expensive guys. I already rattled off the names from. Let's see here. Let's go back to the top. Rahm, McIlroy, Scheffler, Finau, Schauffele, Homa. List goes on. Obviously, most of those guys in the 10K plus range. Value to me is always more interesting when it comes to golf, and I've mentioned a couple of these guys already. But Mitchell, Hardman. Beyond that, you have Grillo and Connors, Montgomery, Wise, Hadwin, Young. Of course, you talked about Jeff, Bradley, Cantlay. These guys are all kind of near the top when it comes to potential value mid-range plays going into this thing. What's your approach to building out a lineup, Jeff? Is it stars and scrubs? Are you trying to balance this thing out? How are you looking at it?
So yeah, it's a 132 man field, so a little bit easier to get 6 of 6 through, just from a numbers perspective. That can lead to, like, again, you creating more chances, but you look at where the ownership is concentrated. I think there's going to be a lot of like Rahm, Cameron Young lineups. I think starting further down, there's just the 9K range to me is like really stacked, and it's stacked with a ton of playable players. So I'd probably rather start there. You get a little bit lesser ownership. Really like Sung J M, Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, even Max Homa, to be honest, and Hideki. Like, I mean, Rahm is Rahm, but like, those players being able to get access to 2 of them is kind of what I would make a priority. So, with the Cameron Young, John Rahm pairing, again, going to be popular. I think if you start with 2 of those other dudes and maybe even try to go 3, I mean, like, look, you could get Morikawa, Thomas, and Sanjay and still have enough left over, and for like a low 7K guy, maybe even 2 low 7K guys. So I think really just hammering that range, whether it be with 2-3 golfers, that's kind of where I'd go. So again, a little bit more of a balanced build scenario for me this week. And I think that going balanced may even be a little bit unique as well.
Fryer, well, we've got a couple minutes before we got to wrap up here and get people off to the Madden simulations. NBA, you got basically half the league in action tonight. There are, I think, 9 games going on. And there's, clearly a lot of star power. Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, LaMelo Ball, Domantas Sabonis. Porzingis has better opportunity because Kyle Kuzma just got ruled out moments ago. Kyrie Irving might be making his Dallas Mavericks debut tonight. He's expected. There's not a lot of, great stud DFS plays tonight that you feel confident about. Like for me, it would be, again, Kristaps, I mentioned, Van Vliet, Adebayo from Miami. It's not most of those names that I mentioned off the top that are the priciest.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's why, generally speaking, I like to look at the sportsbook side of things first anyways, and that's kind of where I'm leaning towards. Now, obviously, we're going to have a same game parlay for one of the games tonight over on ESPN, so you guys will be able to check that out there. But 2 other bets that kind of stand out to me, actually technically 3. So you mentioned Kyrie Irving. His assist prop right now is at 5.5. Luka is not playing tonight, so he should be the ball handler. And look, I know that means everybody wants to look towards his points, but I'm interested in his assists. So it's at 5.5. I know the odds are cranked down or up, however you want to look at it, to -150, so not ideal. You can play this at 6.5 still. I do like it. In his first game with the Celtics and in his first game with the Nets, he went over this number. He actually put, I think it was 7 and 10 in those games, not necessarily respectively. So I expect him to this is where when we talk about reading into the story of the game and everything, I think Kyrie's going to want to facilitate, show we can get along with the guys and everything like that. We know how he's not always the same person he ends up being at the start of his tenure with a new team.
You don't say.
Yeah. And then the other one I would consider looking at with Kyrie too, maybe a little bit more of a sprinkling if you're looking at the over on his assists as a whole unit play or a half unit play, is him to get a double-double tonight. And look, I know you're dealing with Kawhi, you're dealing with Paul George, but again, looking at what Kyrie, obviously, Kyrie's going to get his from a scoring standpoint, and I do think he's going to try and facilitate with these guys tonight. And last I checked, that was at plus 575.
It is. Yep.
I think it opened at 600. At least it was there earlier today. So I'm interested in that one just from a sprinkling perspective. I don't think it's a whole unit play. And then one other game that I'm interested in too, Pacers versus the Heat. Heat are 6-15-2 against the spread as home favorites. Pacers are +7 tonight. I will take those points absolutely. Indy 6-13 against the spread after a loss, and Miami's 500 against the spread after a loss. So I love this spot tonight. Generally speaking, looking to fade Miami as home favorites, and I think the Pacers are a team to beat them tonight.
You mentioned we chatted earlier for a segment that'll be on ESPN's NBA Countdown. Check it out at probably around 7:15 or so Eastern time, I think is when it normally airs. But I won't give away, obviously, the parlay specifically that we talked about. You got to tune in for that. But we were talking about the Celtics, the NBA leaders, and the Sixers, who have won 8 of 10 going into this game. It's in Boston tonight. Is this the game of the night for you? I mean, never, like, props and parlays aside, just looking at the 2 teams that'll be on the floor.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I'm not most interested in seeing what Kyrie looks like in a Mavericks uniform, just because like human interest and dealing with him for as long as we have. Of
course, that game's after 10. You can do both.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there you go. So, I mean, otherwise, though, yeah, I mean, this is a big one for the Celtics, too, because as much as I do like them in this spot, regardless of Joel Embiid's status, they've been up and down of late. Obviously, Jaylen Brown, had his name thrown around in the rumor mill, which I think was a little bit, overblown. I don't think that he's actually going to be moved, especially for Kevin Durant, who's like aging and dealing with like injuries and everything like that. I know there's concern about Brown and him, and him maybe leaving Boston, but I think it's worth the risk at this point. And you're better off trying to add somewhere else with like an ancillary guy. That's what you need. So yes, to me, that is the game of the night. Cause I mean, like from a competitive standpoint, it's just like everyone else seems like they're in blowout spots, except for maybe, I don't know, Timberwolves, Jazz, maybe Warriors, Blazers is good. But other than that, to me, it's Mavericks, Clippers. And even as much as that may turn into a blowout, I just want to see Kyrie in his new setting.
Couple of really good DFS plays in terms of saving some money. Well, Jordan Poole is kind of a mid-tier guy, but value guys, Drew Eubanks, Gabe Vincent, Strong, Jonathan Kuminga for the Warriors, going back to them. Really good play tonight as well. Moose, before we go, do you have any NBA plays, or are you just overwhelmed with Super Bowl and waste management right now?
Yeah, no other sports but golf and football for me right now.
If they don't take place in Arizona for Jeff this week, they are not of
hey,
any
who knows
import.
what'll happen when football ends, though. I get into some crazy stuff. I'll be doing NASCAR again soon, I'm sure. So.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm eager for this. Some of my favorite segments, you and Pierce. Just
got to bring the race cars back.
Yeah, you just out there guessing. All right, thanks to Eamon, our producer, AC, our technical director. Again, this is a special week for us at DraftKings between the Super Bowl and all our coverage out there, and a lot of people out there on Radio Row at the Convention Center in Scottsdale, and of course, very close by, Waste Management Open taking place as well, starting up tomorrow, only hours from now. And Jeff, among others, will be checking that out this weekend. So stay tuned to the DK coverage, both on YouTube, on Twitter, Twitch as well. Sweat and Slate coming your way still every day, and plenty of bonus programming and podcasts of the like as well. So Fryer, good to see you throughout the day today, and Moose, maybe one day we will meet in person. I hope.
Who knows, man? Could happen.
We'll go watch a movie together or something. All right, thanks everybody. See ya.